And in the beginning, I was looking at infant development, and now in the last number of years, looking at embryological development. I had also looked at fetal development, because when a baby is born, when you meet a newborn, you know the movement vocabulary that they have, because they move in the same way. They're moving against gravity, it's more difficult, but on your body you can feel all where they are initiating, how it's traveling through. In water you can see what their movement was. And all of the I don't know if prerequisites is the right word, not prerequisite, pre-movements have already been present. And so if you don't see a movement in a baby, there's some movement limitation, then to look to see, is it a movement limitation that is a birthing issue? Is it a position in the womb? And you can tell, like a baby comes like this, and the foot hasn't, if there's a foot, and you think, well, we call it club foot, and maybe they have another name now that's nicer than that, but, and so they're often braced and all of these things, where if you just stimulate it, like if you brace it, it's still not moving. It's just another position. Where if you give them the stimulation that they were not able to have because it was not able, they weren't able to move it, they will move it, and then you have to travel it through the whole leg, and then it actually goes all the way into the kidneys, and I'm sure it goes all the way up the spine. Where if you just take from one held position to another held position, it's better than to leave it in this position, because they can't walk. At least people can walk. But the adults that I've worked with who've had that, they don't feel their leg in a certain way. And then when they open it as an adult, it's like all of a sudden they have the power of their own leg. So a lot of the things that we're doing with the infant development is not something that impacts their life greatly as far as do they walk, talk, work, play. It affects the ability with which they're able to do it and the sense of their own body. Okay, there's always the question about, well, what are we doing if we're not improving something, or we're not looking at what's wrong? It's a paradox. To say that we just let them grow up the way that they do, we don't. It's not real to say that. We're always directing them in some way. And the question for me is, how do I, and therefore you decide how you, help the child, the baby, to experience their fullest potential as who they are. With babies, people often say, well, what are you looking for? And I'm looking for who the baby is. I'm looking for what they're bringing to me in this moment, because that's the only time that exists, is that particular moment, and that's on the main level. The other one is if it's depending on the age. In the first month, certainly in the first 3 months, it's a process. The baby is really adjusting to being like us, living a life on the moon or Mars. They've just come into a totally new experience. They're breathing differently night and day. It's hard to imagine, except that we've all experienced it. At another level, then, it has to do, certainly there's the nursing, all of the survival things, and then there's just, how was the baby positioned? How did they move in the womb? Were there any difficulties that the womb prevented them from feeling themselves? or prevented them from fully expressing their full movement potential. So we look at the baby was curved this way or this. You just look for little things. Then we want to see, okay, they're going to move from this person that has to be held or put on the, right, we lay them down, although as much as they can be on the body of the parents, it's great. And we're land creatures, we're earth creatures, we're earth beings. Do you put the baby on the front or do you put them on the belly? And on the back? Do you put them on their side? You don't put them on their head. A lot of people put them on their feet, which is really going to throw them into so much extension that will create a problem. And yet people love to. We are, I'm going to use the word evolving. That is our evolution. In the first year, we evolved from being this little ball to standing. And so babies do like that, and parents like that, and people like to see a baby that's upright. But they can't get there on their own. And so when we take a baby beyond what they can do themselves, we're actually inhibiting their development. As the baby develops, first of all, they come up, they begin to come up from the earth. So how they can move away from the earth. On their belly, they're gaining their physical strength. On the back, they're gaining their perceptual awareness of other. Here it's awareness of me. Here it's awareness of you. And how the side is kind of the place of meeting of those. Anyway, once they can begin to move up, then they move across, and that's where they're developing all this deep musculature, always into this core business. And if you stand them, they're not going to develop that. So here, this is a little baby. I'm not going to sit it like this. I'm going to give it the support that it needs so that it doesn't have to do anything else. It's still in the womb in a way. It's still resting against here. So there are ways at which the baby goes from your lap to the floor rather than that you just kind of drop them somewhere or you go like this, that you're always aware, okay, how is the baby going to do that? And then when the baby's here, if the baby's overextended, they're going to be going back like this, or they're going to be going back like that, or the head goes back. And then how do they just kind of play in this range? The hands coming to midline, and also they have choice. They have choice rather than that this is a very flat position, this is a very flat position, and how they get a sense of this. Then once they have this, they go along the floor, they come to sitting. And then eventually as soon as they come to sitting, they're going to do even higher crawling. And then as soon as they do higher crawling, they're going to reach up and they're going to come to here, and then they're going to start coming to here. And so that they can evolve to vertical. So looking all the way what do they need to discover that? Instead of right away you start with this, 3 months old. Or you put them here when they're really little. That's a lot of space for a baby to take in. This is still in this, or maybe in a side sling where they still can come in a way and look out. But to have the baby be the leader of the gang here is a big world when they don't really have the nervous system yet to take it in. On the other hand, maybe they're going to be the ones to live on Mars. I don't know. I won't be here. So it's not a judgment. It's just creating a different experience.